few months back, Julie was looking for a fill-in co-host on the mom game, and it was a day we were around, so I did it. And she told me the topic that she was having on Sandra, who joins us now, from a company called Braintopia, which I had never heard of before. And the applause again. Susie loves it.
I'm here for it.
So I did that interview. Julie had been taking her son, Ryder, who maybe had been, 10 at the time? He was around there. And he had just been dealing with some things, some things that had, like, behaviorally or just dealing with social situations. And my daughter was diagnosed autistic very early on. It was not a late diagnosis. We knew, people were telling us, or teachers were telling us. And so we did the interview, and I was like, man, I really want to try this with Nora. Part of it, I think, is guilt, like with your dog. I'll just throw money at this if it'll make me feel like like I'm doing something to help my kid. There's somebody who says they have something that can help my kid, and I don't want to go do it. I'm going to try to make it work. So I read about it for months. I stayed interested in it. I reached back out to Sandra. And now, because we don't really do this all that much, it kind of feels infomercially. Like, I just want to make sure people know this is something that I'm very interested in. 10, 15 years ago, I read a book called Who's in Charge, just about free will and nature, nurture, like the kind of the dawn of like pulp science, neuroscience. And then I went to rehab, and there's a whole lot of neuroscience if you want to go that route in the recovery game. So I reached back out to Sandra, and now my daughter and I are doing this treatment in this process at Braintopia, which is what?
Neurofeedback therapy. So neurofeedback therapy is a way to work with the brain waves and the electrical system of the brain. So there are different ways that we can get dysregulated. We talked a little bit about, some of you were talking about childhood trauma. That's a big one. Concussion and injury, which is a big one with your audience, I'm sure. Food sensitivities and any kind of metabolic issues. And then environmental issues, which molds, mycotoxins, those things. So when the brain gets out of regulation, there's all kinds of symptoms that come up, and we help to get them regulated again so that those symptoms subside.
Okay, that's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's so how did you get into this?
I got into this because of my son. So I have a 13-year-old now. He was 9 at the time, and we were seeing a lot of just dysregulated behavior. He's adopted, and so we know that there's some trauma that happens with adopted kids just by nature of that whole process. And we did not want to go the medication route because there was some addiction in his background. We didn't want to expose him to that if we didn't have to. We're not anti-meds, but we just wanted to see if there was something else that could help him out.
And this was like in its early stages at that point. Like, I'll tell you this, I remember first hearing about this with like athletes. 10 or 15 years ago, Dan, in the off season, whoever's being profiled, and they've got this guy does, probably LeBron. He does everything for his mind and his body. And I started hearing about athletes who were doing something called neurofeedback. And so this is, I guess, the same thing. It's just now, like anything else, when it gets bigger, it can be used by everybody, not just like the super elite, right. I guess. So were you at the ground floor of the company?
For Braintopia, yes,
Yeah.
but neurofeedback has been around since the 1960s.
Right.
So it's been around a long time. It started gaining more notoriety as things like shows like Netflix started showing different athletes that are doing it. Like Kirk Cousins, he's a big proponent of this. And so a lot of athletes will use it for peak performance to keep them on top of their game and to heal from different things, to clear inflammation in their brain if that's happening. So we started with a friend of mine from high school. She had a company. And so we started and came in. I was just going to do it very part-time. I'm a teacher by nature. I just retired from that in December. And but then this grew so fast because there's such a need for it and such a desire for it in the market that we grew from one location in Frisco to 11 across the Metroplex in about 3 years. So, and then we broke off from that first company and built Braintopia.
So when you, like Kirk Cousins, let's say, for example, what is he doing? What are they doing for him? Or is it like visualization and positivity? What are we
No,
talking?
no, it's actually functional work. So it's actual physical regulation of brain waves. So we start with what's called a QEEG brain map. I should have put some pictures of Jake doing his a couple days ago. You put a cap on. We're recording brain waves both with your eyes closed and with your eyes open to see how your brain is taking in stimuli when it's not. With your eyes not open, and then when you are opening your eyes. So it's basically saying how's your brain operating when it's not taking in stimuli, and how is it emotionally operating when it is. And so it goes to the heart. We have a lot of male clients because, to your point, a lot of people do not want to talk about any issues, but they do want to resolve them. And so neurofeedback is a very passive way. Ultimately, what you're doing is watching a television show, and you're getting audio and visual stimulation from that. Jake, you just did it yesterday.
Yeah.
What was your experience with it?
Yeah, I had no idea what to expect. They say, listen, you can just watch TV. Just watch a show. We have all the streaming services, and in the audio and in the visual on the screen, you are getting some sort of like balancing feedback to where when your brain goes too high over one thing, it's trying to train it to come back down. So I didn't know that would look like in practice, and what it looks like is I was watching something on YouTube, and as you're watching it is a little, I wouldn't say it's tiring, but it is working your brain a little bit. It'll get brighter, it'll get lighter, it'll get louder, it'll get quieter, and it's just rolling with your brain activity.
What will get brighter?
The TV show
Okay.
or the headphones, the audio component of the show is going up and down.
And you watch that, activity?
And the screen gets brighter, dimmer, a little different looking.
Oh, okay.
And it's actually, I guess, counteracting sort
like
of what's happening in
a
your...
light show if you have it hooked up to your music or something. Sometimes
Right, but it's hooked up to your brain.
pumps up, yeah.
And I don't know if there was
showing your
anything
brain's
to...
reaction
I was
to-
trying to mess with it a little bit. Like, I wonder if I
Yeah,
could think my
everyone
way...
always does.
I was like, I want to think my... And I could find no rhyme or reason because
No.
I think we think... I think
if
what
we
this comes
added-
down to is I know that there's a lot going on that... I know I'm not that smart, but I know that there are things you can do... I know that there are things you can do to improve your... I guess just your overall brain power, your ability to deal with things. There's brain health, I guess, brain maintenance. I know that there's something to that. Like, because I feel it in like like when you meditate, I know that there's something happening to my brain. Like if there's a way they can one-shot your meditation and all of your things you need to do to balance your brain, that was very appealing to me.
Because the last two stories you've told about something similar where you go into some kind of a clinic or like a doctor's office or something, but it's then you're watching something on TV. One was the fertility clinic and one is this. So what if we combine the businesses?
That's a great idea.
So now you're watching the dirtiest porn ever because they
Right.
give you that. Do you know this secret about fertility clinics?
I don't, but I'm very interested at this point.
Like you guys have never had to do it? Okay, so I had to do it too. Go give a sample.
Yeah.
They must have like a sweet. There's a sweet 60-year-old lady at the intake,
Or maybe even a really young lady.
Yeah, whatever.
They don't.
But they say we need to buy materials for men to get the sample. So go out and buy it. They need to send like me.
Yeah, me and my
Some
buddy.
dirtbag.
Me and my buddy want to be like sommeliers. Like we have a service, we bring it in because
Because they buy the
they
dirty,
get a lady to
the
do it, and they buy
worst
insane.
smut.
Like what the?
Behind
this is
you ever go
nobody
into one
wa-
of those crappy gas stations and they've got the stuff behind the counter with the it's
They're
covered
buying
up,
that.
it's blacktail.
You
or
get in
whatever.
there and you're like, who?
Right.
Do y'all think this is normal? This
Yeah,
is
and it's
way
the
over.
worst, over the top. Like there's no tasteful Playboy or something. There's like a anyway.
So you're back to your
That was
business
kind
idea.
of a joke. So, but once you, so how do you know how to read these waves and determine what does this mean?
So there are thresholds that we want. We're mapping 5 different brains or 5 different brain waves as we are going through a session, and there's different thresholds that we want to see. Based on the brain map that we do at the beginning, we know what we're looking for. So for Jake, for example, he had a lot of lows. So the first thing that I asked is, do we have a history of a concussion? which he said he did. And just some of the medical history that we knew, I didn't know a lot, but just some of the that I did know really tracked with what he was dealing with. So we have a specialized protocol.
The addict part.
There, yeah, well, yeah.
I'll
that
just
part.
say it. I'll make it, yeah.
Yeah. So we're really interested at Braintopia on why certain people will go towards certain drugs of choice or certain addictions, and it's very much connected with how their brain is operating. So if your brain is low, you're going to look for something to constantly be bringing that up. And when we think about anyone with ASD, that's why they're stimming, that's why they're moving around. And so this is basically putting your brain into a fight or flight position, making it respond without having the emotional component to it, because it's very passive for you. So it is really healing a lot of the issues that our brain is overcompensating for without having to go to therapy or without having to do some of the more active things.
How is it healing, though? What are we... Okay, so you're now, let's say, looking at a kid who has... What did you had a acronym.
ASD.
What's that?
Asperger's?
The autism spectrum.
Okay,
Autism spectrum disorder.
Okay.
But so, because I don't know that I introed this well enough,
Because
but
the goal is that you're improving something.
yeah,
when
yeah,
you walk
yeah. You
out.
got to have a baseline. So I'm doing this, and I guess I would fit into the peak. I'm an adult,
performance.
but for kids, it's all manner of things. It's ADHD, it's autism, it's anxiety. It's
Well,
the kids get.
Yeah,
I'm
and
just
I
saying,
even mean with you. Like, how are we improving?
right. So that is what I guess. I just want to make sure people understand. Like that is that you come in maybe trying to troubleshoot something. I don't know how many people you have come in that are just like, I just think this is cool.
Yeah.
They're usually there's
Probably not.
I'm
Not
sure
a lot.
I'm sure
yeah.
some.
Maybe some, but for
And
the
that's
most
kind of
part,
what I'm doing at
yeah.
this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I just wanted to establish that.
Well, I would guess too, if you're with your daughter, then it's like, hey, we're doing this together.
That's why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So you're asking, how does it get better? First, identifying what part of the brain, there are 14 different areas of the brain that we're working with, and each one of those is associated with a certain symptom. So we're looking at what are the symptoms that we want to work on. From there, when you have the sensors on your head, it's reading brainwave activity, and that is what is making that sends it to the computer. That's what's making the TV fluctuate. So the protocols that are set up in our technology, in our software, is what is making the brain respond. So we're watching the different thresholds and seeing how different things that are low are coming up. So for example, Jake, his alpha was low, which can lead to feelings of... Right.
We knew that.
Right.
Beta.
His beta was a little high, which is a fight or flight
cuck
response.
Yeah.
Off the charts.
Yeah. So I guess I knew I've always been told by therapists my fight or flight is jacked up. That it's you're in fight mode way too often. You trigger into being.
Which is why you
if
would
you're
want
a
something
walk on
to-
eggshells type person as a
Uh-huh.
kid, that can really get to you. So they say.
Okay.
So I almost think of what they're doing is resistance training, because it's a counterweight to how it's trying to train you. This is when I should react this way. This is when I should react this way.
But how are they? How is that? I don't know. Manifest. Are you just telling him?
No, everything is going on based on the audio and visual cues that he's getting.
But how is that then going to change in the future is what I'm wondering. So
Well,
now
as-
I want to stop being that person. I want to be a little better.
Yeah.
What do you...
So as the brain waves are getting back into organized patterns based on the audio and visual stimulation, and when they get into those organized patterns, those symptoms that are in that part of the brain start to alleviate. So if we have frontal lobe impulsivity or attention issues, as those are getting back into the appropriate thresholds, which is based on Hertz levels, then we start to see those symptoms alleviating.
For example, my daughter stims a lot. If she gets in certain contexts, when she gets excited, her hands flap very hard. When she was younger, and this is when we first noticed some sort of presenting symptom, she would cross her eyes and she would just flap her hands super hard. So that when they knew that and they looked at her brain map, they're like, this makes sense.
This is if you're in some kind of a situation where you're not
It doesn't have to be
comfortable or...
Dude, it doesn't have to be that at all. She
Okay.
loves her iPad, and when she gets half an hour on the iPad, she sits there and tweaks like crazy the whole time.
Okay.
And if she's telling me a story about something she just made up in her head, she'll start doing it.
All right.
Doesn't even really need an object. And there are things happening in her brain, I guess, that are like she's slow getting reaction to stimulus, and then when she does, as Sandra puts it, like slow getting off the starting line, it just floods her.
Okay.
And then she gets really nervous. And there's a whole bunch of presenting parts of it. Not
So
to get too much into
the
her
goal
thing,
is
but
to like even it all out,
Right.
and you can actually do that somehow
Yeah.
physically.
Yeah.
which brought me to the question of what I've come to call the Des dilemma in our sports debates, which is one of my favorite athletes of all time, Des Bryant. He went way too hard, but I don't think he would have been great if he didn't go so hard. Like, he was crazy. He was losing his mind on the sidelines. But I just don't know that he would have ever been able to get by on talent alone. Like, he was a maniac. And you don't want to, like, dull the things that make you who you are.
Well, that's the age-old thing.
Sure.
Is that actually? Could you?
Well, I
Right.
think...
It's like I'll take the good with the bad. I'll take whatever.
Right.
But could he have actually like calmed himself?
I think anything is possible,
And would that
but
have-
in the range of possibilities,
But it's
who
like,
knows?
he was abused as a kid. That fueled his humor, and that's why he's.
You hear it both ways on addict parents too.
Yeah.
Like, oh, my dad was an addict, so that's why. Or you're
That's
listening
why I
and you're
don't.
like, I never touched it ever
Because of that, yeah.
So, and that's what I said. This is stuff I'm fascinated by, but it's out there. And your thought on that, I guess I should establish, was that it's not changing your personality.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if you have any way to expound on that, because that did have me kind of worried. Like,
Which sometimes
am I gonna
you would
lose
say
my-
if you do go to medication,
because I'm kind
that's
of
something
I'm
that
kind of
can
a
happen,
bad
right?
boy,
Right.
you know. I don't want to be losing my.
Yeah, you're kick ass. Everyone knows it.
Well, yeah, it's not changing who you are at the core. So let's use ADHD as an example. An ADHD brain does not, we don't say we cure it. It doesn't, it's part of who you are. It's part of how you were made. What we do is help with the symptoms that make life difficult. So going back to the Des Bryant, what could be beneficial for him is knowing when he can turn it on and when to turn it off. So the brain's ability, it's called neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to be up when you need to be up, but then to be able to calm back down into a more regulated state and into a sleep state and different things like that. That's where we get into addiction problems, is when the brain doesn't know how to do that and it's just up here all the time. Then we have to self-medicate to be able to get down into that state. So that's what neurofeedback does. It helps you to create that neuroplasticity where you're able to have the high highs, but then get back into a regulated state as well.
Has this thing been going on, like you said, it's at least in some way, shape, or form, maybe even since the 60s or something? Has there been actual, like, this kid was dealing with these autistic things, and look at how much this has improved them. They're now 30 years old and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the criticism of neurofeedback, is that there's not enough blind studies and things that you can do with meds. But I mean, my niece is a perfect example. She started before she was even 2 years old and was looking at all kinds of diagnoses potentially down the line of autism, and she wasn't speaking, she was nonverbal, she was hitting her head all the time, and now she is a completely amazing 4.5-year-old that you'd never know anything.
Does it show up on the map?
It does.
That it's different?
Absolutely.
Now
we looked at different factors though. We looked at her diet, we looked at supplementation. This isn't something we look at in a silo. It's with all different other, with environment and metabolics and psychological, but it is definitely the functional piece that helps with a lot of this.
I think that having the follow-up map is helpful. Like, I pressed my chiropractor for a follow-up x-ray. He didn't really want to do it. Because I was like, I feel better, but I know this is what I mean when I say that I'm not. I know enough to know that I'm not a smart. Like, our brains, the whole signal and the noise thing. You think you know, you don't know. You're not. You know what I mean?
Are you smart enough to feel dumb?
Yes, exactly. You think you feel better, but why don't we prove it? Like, let's actually do the scan, and the fact that you guys do that, I think, says a lot.
Well, and we look every session. We look at comparison to the last session, so we can see how with the numbers, because otherwise it's just going off what you feel, and feelings are real, but they don't always tell the truth. So we got to have data.
So yeah, you just sit there and watch, Dan. You just and for me, I'm already, because I'm going to be doing this maybe a couple times a week. Nora's doing it. We'll do it for, and I think you said timeline wise,
it's about 4 months.
That usually you start to get results. And how do people do, what's the treatment, cadency after that? How does it work?
Well, we get to what we do is work to get to the root cause of what's happening, so that once you get back into a regulated state, unless there is an injury or something that's mold in the house or food sensitivities, unless that is happening, your brain has learned what it needs to learn. It has been trained into the state that we want it in. So it's not something you have to do forever. We ask that people come back every year and just remap so that we can keep an eye on how things are going and what's going on. But it's not something you have to do forever.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know that I even really knew that.
What's the mold situation? You brought that up a couple times.
That's
like what Machine had to move out of his house for
mold's a huge
15
problem.
months.
Yeah. So my dad's an MD, and he, for the last 25 years, Dave was the CEO of his company. They had a mold remediation laboratory and would test for that, and that causes so many neurological issues that people don't even realize. It's like the last thing that they look at because they try everything else. But mold's effect on the brain is paramount. Like it is terrible. And so it causes all kinds of issues, and most people don't even know about it until they're really far down the line of being very, very sick.
When I was long COVID or whatever, I don't know, it was affecting me. And I remember reading something, and I read some mold stuff and ordered like you could check for black mold in your house thing.
Nice.
And I went around the house because I'm like, this is more than just...
Was there mold? Did you have mold?
No.
Good.
It was I just sucked.
I want to get back to the treatment plan too and the cost, because I think that's important. But that right there is kind of how I would sum this all up. Again, back to I'm not smart enough to know how this works. I'm smart enough to make it make sense to myself. And that the way that we live, I don't think it's like normal. I think you probably had a higher chance of dying 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago. But I think being alive, there was just less going on. Like, you're assaulted just by, you shouldn't know what's going on in global politics. You should maybe know what's going on in the next town over, maybe. But we've arrived at this point where you're just like constantly.
Yeah, we've advanced so much past our biology. Right?
I
Yeah.
truly believe that.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm willing to take a shot on, well, if it's mold, if it's screens, whatever, if there's something I can do to try to stem that, it just makes sense to me. Because there's no way there's no negative effects of all the things that we have going on. So do some people come in and just do the map?
Yeah.
And you said that's what?
That's $399.
Okay. And then a full treatment of 4 months or so for a kid, what would that typically run?
So that's 30 sessions and 2 additional remaps, and that's around $3,900.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think people spend way less on or more on kids' sports stuff. So yeah, it's something I'm very interested in, and I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah.
I got Radiolab pilled. You ever a Radiolab fan?
Mm-mm.
It was a podcast very early on that would get into this sort of stuff. I mean, this is the dark part of it a little bit, but this has implications in the criminal justice system.
It does.
Because the story we always used to go back to, Dan, that was a wild one, was a dude's at his house with his wife one day, and the feds come. He's got a family, normal life. The feds come. He's got tons of child porn. And he's his wife had no idea, right? So they start going through his life. He had a serious TBI, 5 years prior. I think he might have fell at work, and his brain was hemorrhaging and pressing on his nerves. And they were making the case that this is not something they could prove had been involved in before this. And it's weird to talk about because
it just triggered this.
Yeah, because
you now
in some way
kids.
You're really getting to the root of punishment of well, then what's anybody's fault ever?
Right.
And that's I mean,
if there are just buttons to push up there.
And that's when I remember reading that story and being there's got to be something more here.
Yeah. I kind of remember that story. I don't remember if he
what
that
happened?
helped his defense at all, or
the weirdest thing to me, but it also makes sense because this is just how democracy works. In my mind, that's either you believe it and this guy's free, or you don't and he's not. But the judge sort of
Or we
half
believe
the
it
baby.
and put him into help, getting him the help
Yeah,
he needed.
for sure.
Yeah.
But they sort of split the baby and said, you're going to prison, but for half the amount of time.
Yeah.
So he got like 10 years or something.
Yeah.
Because the judge is like, it seems believable, but I can't just let you walk. We don't really have a precedent for that. But maybe 100 years from now, we will.
Yeah. It's tough to run on that platform, too.
It's not a winning one.
Make sure we don't
Help your kids' brain
incarcerate
health.
some of the child porn.
Help your kids' brain
collectors.
health is a much better selling point for Braintopia. So what do you want to tell people? Where do we go? You guys have a ton of locations.
We do. We have 11 locations, and we have home units as well, so we can send these all over the country. One thing I just want people to know is that there is a different solution. Some people just don't want to go the med route, and that's okay. Like I said, we're not anti-med, but if you want to, one, know about what's going on in your brain so that we can figure out if there's anything that for teenagers especially, we want to look at what could you be susceptible to that potentially you may look at as far as any self-medication, and so to teach them that. But more than anything, we say neurofeedback may not be for everyone, but the brain map is for everyone. What's going on in our brain and how our brain operates is something we should all know, and it can counteract and stop a lot of stuff that we, as 40-plus-year-olds are dealing with now. We could have stopped that when we were much younger. So being on the forefront of it is super important.
I'm happy for you. This is very cool.
Thank you. Well, I'm happy you took a chance with us and came in and contacted us again. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, these guys aren't going to know what hit them when I get into peak performance. I'm going to be flying circles around them, just peaking all the time.
Well, Sandra from Braintopia and husband, thank you.
Another one. Wow.
That's a big one.
That's the big one.